10, 9, 8. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, I'm going to, I actually looked for one of these little pieces to do the engine mount, and they don't give you the size for the engine mount, which is kind of weird. I guess they don't figure you need to cut them. You'll just buy them pre-cut. Anyway, so what I'll do, and I'll show you how this works, this little measurement thing here. So we want a 1-inch mark on this, and the tube itself is actually, looks like 3.5 inches. So mark that on there. So what I'm going to do is I can actually try to measure it from here, but it's kind of wonky again. So I'm going to do it from the other side so it'll be a little more stable. So basically what we're going to want, since it's 3.5 and we want a mark at 1 inch, so we're going to have 2.5 inches from the other side. So what we'll do is we'll move this down to 2.5 right there, and then that way we can put the tube in there. You can actually put the pencil in and then make sure it's a tight fit. You have to sand the pencil down, and then while pressing on the pencil I'm going to turn the tube, and it should make me a mark that's pretty smooth. So kind of, like I said, works pretty good. We'll use that, and then we will make the mark at 3 and what do we say, 3 1/4. So now this one I want to use from the other end again. So we've got a 1 inch here, and we're going to have 1 3 or 3 1/4 inches there. Again, using the pencil and pushing it up against there. Yep. See, now that one didn't work. That one was all over the place. So good thing it's a pencil. Erase that. That's why I don't like using that system. It's hard to hold. So let's try that again. If I had three or four hands, this would be really easy. So again, I'm going to push it up against it, and I'm going to roll it around. Yeah. So that worked pretty good. So now we got that mark there. So now we're ready to go to the next step. Okay, so now I'm going to put in the engine hook, and I want to make sure it goes straight back instead of at an angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tube and I'm going to mark a line basically all the way this way and make sure that it's level. Now normally I can use this edge if it was a bigger tube, but this one's a smaller tube. So luckily they give me a little slot here that I can use as a guide. So I'm going to put the engine mount in there and hold it tight, and then make a line like so, and then continue it to that side. So now I got something that's really straight that I can guide the actual hook by and have it in a straight line. The instructions get kind of vague here. They don't even tell you to cut the little slot for this, so they expect that you already know what you're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a slot right where this crosshair is here, and give you a better shot of that here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a slot right here near the front. I just want to be careful that I don't go too far and end up cutting the tube and compromising its strength. So now the hook goes into that slot, and then we'll have it set like that. But now you can see how I could have gotten it off this way or the other way, but now with that line down the middle I can make sure I get it perfectly straight. Alright, to the next step. Okay, now without gluing this hook in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the engine block, which fits here right up against that hook. Now what's interesting is this one, for whatever reason, this one is really loose. Usually these fit really tight, and so you don't have to worry about centering them, but this one's loose, so I am going to have to center it. It does stick out a little bit, just a hair, So I'll make sure that that is sticking out correct all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some glue and I'm going to put it around the edge of the tube here. And I don't want to put too much in there because then you're going to have lumps of glue where the engine goes, and the engine may not fit up against this mount. So I just want to make sure that the glue goes in about as deep as that hook is. But I do want a little more glue than normal because it's got a gap because it's fitting loose in there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to set that mount in there, or block I should say. And then I want to make sure that it's fairly even. So now I've got an even, yep, it's not quite even. So anyways, I'm going to make sure that's completely even before it dries, and then going to let that dry and then move to the next step. Okay, I am going to go to the next step, and what I'm going to do is actually put on the engine mount ring, and the instructions are showing that that's where I drew that ring at 1 inch. So I'm going to put glue on there, and then I'm going to slide that mounting ring. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these and cut it out and get it all ready to install. Again, just making sure you have a sharp knife. If it starts getting dull, change the blade, because dull knives can be aggravating and they cut much easier because they like to slip. So, okay. So now we'll clean that up. These little nibs, we're going to clean that with some sanding paper and then get ready to install it. Okay, we're ready to put some glue on this line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth it out thin enough that I can still see the line, because I do want to make sure that this ring gets straight as well. So we'll just not use as much because we're going to put a fillet on it to strengthen it anyways. Okay, so now with making sure that hook is even, we're going to put this ring over the end, and it has a notch in it to go over the actual launch wire there. Okay, it's a little tight. Okay, so again, making sure everything's straight. I'm going to push it into the glue, and then looking at the line, make sure it's lined up completely with the line. That way we know it's straight up and it'll fit nice and snug inside the tube. So we've got that, and then I'm going to just take some glue and I'm going to put it around here to make a fillet, and then let that dry and then do the other side. Okay, actually before that fillet dries, I need to put the retaining tube on, which is that gray charcoal color tube. So I'm going to put some glue on here, and this is going to have to be put on pretty quick because it's going to start to get sticky pretty fast. So we're going to put that on there like so, and then it goes all the way up against that tube, and then we can even push the tube back against it if we want to, because it's going to be level. Okay, so now we've got that piece on. We can put a fillet on this side now and make sure, and then here, make sure everything's working right. And this should still have some spring, should still be centered. And then I'll put the front tube, the front mount, in this on the front here the same way. Okay, got the engine mount all glued up, and I'm just going to let it dry. An extra ring of glue right there, keep that block from moving, and did the fillets here. And then I'll do some from the other side once these dry, but I'll just set this up to dry vertically. That way the glue will go straight down and get in all those gaps. And then we'll have a finished motor mount. Okay, moving right along with the Hi Flier XL rocket. I have the fins are dry from the first coating of the lacquer sanding sealer. And now I need a sand, and then I'm going to do another coat of it. But what I like to use to sand is actually this, which is a 4/0 steel wool. It's a very fine steel wool. I do sell this on my MouseWorks website. Works real good, and it puts down a nice polish on it. So basically what I'm going to do is just lightly do circular motions on it, and you'll be able to feel how smooth it's getting compared to what is actually on the other parts of the fin. But what's nice about this is it doesn't gouge the wood like sandpaper does. It does leave these little fibers because they break off whenever they tear off a piece of rough part of the fin. So do wear a mask and do not breathe this stuff in. So I will finish sanding or buffing, or whatever you want to call it, all the fins, and then I will do another coat of sanding sealer. Alright, it's best, little tip here, instead of blowing it off with this compressed air, all that dust, since it is metal fibers, I just take a damp cloth and clean up as much as I can before I blow this stuff into the air. So you can see there's actually quite a bit of pieces of metal there. So just pick that up with the paper towel, wipe it down, and then that way it does not go airborne. Okay, I'm giving the fins a second coat. Now this coat won't soak in as much, so it'll stay on the surface. So just make sure you use a little less of it than you did on the first coat. Okay, I'm ready to shift gears while I keep working on those fins. And what I'm going to do is the next step they show, now that the motor mount is all dry, is putting the fins on one of the tubes. Now, a couple problems with that. First of all, sometimes if you press these fins onto the tube and you press too hard, you warp the tube a little bit. So what I like to do is I like to install this first, and that gives it a little bit more rigidity to actually put the fins on. The other thing is they show you put fins on one of the tubes, and unfortunately with that guide, my little Estes fin guide, it'll only hang off a few inches here, and so it won't be straight. So it needs to fit along a tube quite a bit of distance on the tube to be able to sit right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put the two tubes together, get them nice and straight, and then put the fins on, and that way I can use the fin alignment tool. And I'll show you what that looks like. Now, a little error that Estes made, which I didn't realize, when I cut out the fin marking guide, on the back side was actually part of the instruction. Usually they try to do it so what you cut out is just nothing. But this one, they kind of screwed that up, and I didn't even think about it. So now I got it. Luckily I saved the piece, so now here's the piece that's basically was missing. So it's just showing you where to put the glue to put the two tubes together after you put the fins on. We're going to do it before the fins on, and then how to put the motor mount in and what distances and the actual launch lug. But yeah, they need to correct those instructions. So we'll get ready to put the two tubes together. Okay, so now I am ready to actually put the two tubes together, and I want to make sure everything's really straight. This is the tubing coupler here. We need to make this half and half, basically half down below and half in the upper tube, and they kind of show that here in the instructions. Unfortunately it's kind of cut out, but they'll tell you something and ½ inch, so I'm guessing that's exactly half. Let's find out how long it is. So it's 3 inches long, so we want 1½ inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 1½ inches, which is right there, and then to make sure the tube sits perfectly on it, I'm going to take my alignment guide, and we are going to go to 1½. So I've moved it to 1½. Put the tube on there, put the pencil in, and we'll roll it around. That way I can make sure the tubes aren't on crooked. Okay, so now I've got a good line all the way around it. You can get by with just the mark, but I like to do this just to make sure everything I get on there is straight. So now what I'm going to do is just put a little glue on one end and slide it in, and I got to work pretty fast because this glue starts getting sticky pretty quick. So as you push it in, it'll start to slow down, and if you don't get it to where you want, you'll get stuck and it'll be too far on one side or the other. Okay. So now we want to make sure that we are doing this correctly. Make sure we're doing it on the front side and not where all the marks are for the fin guides and everything here. So we're just going to glue it and snug it in there to that point there. So what we'll do is we're going to actually put the glue on the they're saying put it in the tube, so we'll do that. So we'll smear some of the glue all down in here. And we don't need much because it's going to push it all to one side. So, but it's actually better to put more glue because it'll stay slicker longer. If you put less glue, it dries so fast that it's going to be hard to move this tube coupler. So now we've got the actual glue in there, and we're going to push this in and push it down to the mark that we've got. Okay. Okay. So we've got that pushed down, and now what we're going to do is we're going to actually put the other tube on the other side and make sure it comes down completely straight. Let's do a test fit first. And it is a tight fit. There we go. So it's going to look basically like that. See, there's a little gap there, so I'm going to try to roll that into position and make sure it's actually perfectly smooth, and then I'm going to lay it on a flat surface for it to dry. So let's get that going. Oops, let's put it in the tube first. Okay. Now if you have a problem with this Carpenter's Type Bond yellow glue drying too fast, you can use white Elmer's glue. It actually takes longer to dry. Not quite as strong, but it does have a little longer dry time. So, okay, so we've got a good glue mass on there. And again, we're going to have to move pretty quick. So, come on, baby, there we go. And we're going to roll it around until we've got a good seam. I'm going to try to get the spiral in the same place. So now we've got all the way around. It's pretty tight. Show you a little close up here. So you can see it's a pretty tight hook up there. So like I said, I'm going to put it on this flat surface of my work table and roll it a little bit to make sure it actually straightens out. And then I'm going to let it dry just like that. Okay, now that this is dry, I'm actually ready to put the motor mount in. And for this, they don't give you any measurements, unfortunately, of where to put the glue. But I'm going to actually just use the motor mount itself as a guide. So now these are supposed to be flush. This part here is actually supposed to be flush with this one. So we'll get them pretty darn flush. About so. And that's where the glue should be, approximately there. And there, I'm not going to worry about the lower because I'm going to get to it afterwards. So what we're going to do. So I'm going to measure that. And then I'm going to take a stick, which I honestly don't really need to measure after all. Just take the stick, go up to the line, and maybe a little bit past, because we're going to put the glue right past that. And I'm going to mark the stick here. So now I know how far to, when I use the glue, how far to put the stick in and start smoothing the glue, and it will put it down in the right exact area. And then we will slide the motor mount in. I like to always test fit everything. So it looks like the motor mount's going to fit in, no problem. So, okay. So we'll get the glue out, and we will put that ring in there. And you want to be pretty generous with the glue on this part, because you won't be able to get into it after it's dry. So again, looking at the wrong end. So let's make sure I'm doing this correct. We will wipe this off. Would have gone too far. So, okay. So now we've got it the right side. So we're just going to take it. We're going to go down to the end of the mark and start putting some of the glue in. Okay, you kind of see it in there. No, maybe not. Anyways, I'm going to continue putting a ring of glue in there, and then we'll put the motor mount in. The glue is in there. We're ready to push in the motor mount. Again, we have to work pretty quickly. So we will push it in and push that through the glue. And again, it'll start to slow down. And then we can actually put it on something square to make sure that it gets actually flush with the end of the rocket. So you can see we're pretty flush here. We can take our ruler and make sure that it's sitting flush, just like that. And then we will let that tack up, and then we're going to actually put a bead of glue, a little fillet, on the inside here of that ring and reinforce it. Unfortunately, we can't get to that end of the ring, even if we only had one tube. So we'll do that and then set it up vertically and let it dry.